name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to Chaotic Riffs Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.chaoticriffs.com, and we're speaking with lead singer Joey Cox from the band Laynes Calling, and the band is based out of Kentucky. Is that right, Joey?
Yes, sir. Out of Louisville, Kentucky.
And let me ask you, what is the music scene, or specifically, is there much of a metal scene there these days?
As far as metal, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't say right now per se, especially with the virus, but I mean, we did just have the band Knocked Loose that blew up out of nowhere, they're out of Louisville, so.
That's pretty good. That's good to hear. Now, how long?
And actually, their original drummer for their first two tours actually helped us with the EP.
Oh, really? And how so? What's his role been with your band?
He just helped us with the EP for a little bit. He did a couple shows with us. Right now, he's focusing on his studio work.
Okay, so you've got a new drummer, then, I take it?
Yeah. His name's Mike, but he's definitely not new. The guy is, hands down, probably one of the most phenomenal drummers I've ever played with. Okay. As far as energy, it doesn't get any better.
And did you know Mike previously, or did you just know him from playing the local music scene, or what?
Actually, our guitarist, Brandon, had introduced me to Mike right after Nate, who was the guy from Knocked Loose had been helping us. He introduced me to Mike right after Nate decided to focus on his studio work, and I'm not going to lie, had I had Mike with me from day one, we'd be in a lot different place now. Well,
you're in a pretty good place right now. Let's get right into that now. The band, of course, is called Laynes Calling, so I always love to ask people, like, what's the story behind the band's name? Because I know that's always quite an interesting thing, and a hard thing to come up with as a band name.
Well, so, funny story.
Yeah.
When I released the song Not Well 2 years ago, literally, and here's something you're going to hear a lot with this band.
Okay.
Everything for us has always happened in threes.
I love that.
So, I released Not Well. 3 days later, I was contacted by Derek P. Sean and Paul Crosby of 434 Management.
Wow.
Literally 3 days after that, I had the distribution deal from Pavement Entertainment on the table.
Oh, wow.
So I'm sitting here trying to wrap my head around everything that was happening.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I should probably put a band together.
Okay. Yeah.
So I started putting a group of guys together, and ironically, the day that we got our contract from Pavement was the anniversary of Layne Staley's death.
Oh, wow.
And I've always been kind of compared to him vocal-wise.
Wow.
So I was like, what better way to pay tribute, you know?
Oh, yeah, that is definitely, what a kind of original thought, and kind of staying true to your roots. And, I think you're right, it's a great little story, because, people are going to just naturally, what's Laynes Calling? What is that? And then when they, Layne Staley, wow, that's the connection. You're definitely going to, a lot of people are going to pick up on that eventually, the more you're around.
Absolutely. And for the first probably year and a half of doing live shows as Layne Calling, I always had an Alice in Chains cover in there at some point in our set. Oh, wow. So it started off as Rooster, and then went Down in a Hole. Yeah. Then Man in the Box, which is actually in our current set list.
Oh, that was always my favorite. I had a lot of favorite Alice in Chains songs, but that was one of my favorites. And I think it's probably because, like a lot of people, that was kind of my introduction to Alice in Chains. That's the first music video I ever remember seeing from him,
Oh, absolutely. And hands down, Alice in Chains, a lot of people can pinpoint what changed their mindset for the music. Hands down, what made me decide, I guess the defining moment for me wanting to be a musician was Alice in Chains' Unplugged set. Hearing them do the song Nutshell live and unplugged. Yeah. That was the defining moment for me.
Definitely that Unplugged, that's one of my favorite albums, and I think even though Alice in Chains did their Unplugged, obviously a little later in that Unplugged series, they were actually one of the better. They had one of the better shows, I think, than some of the bands, but they did that great. And I got to ask, obviously you're an Alice in Chains fan, so after Layne Staley had passed on and they came back, they returned with William Defoe. What did you think of him? Replacing Layne Staley. What do you think of John?
As far as replacement, I don't see William Duvall as a replacement at all. I see that guy is definitely part of their team now.
Yeah.
But more so, he fell right in as far as the vocal ability and being as true, I guess, to the Alice in Chains sound as you possibly could. I think he hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah, I was going to say that because, like you said, who's going to replace Layne Staley? But I think it was more of an evolution. But I mean, I will say before I heard it, like actually any recording with him, I thought, okay, how are they going to replace Layne Staley? But I tell you, they took long enough to find the guy. I don't know how they found him, but he does a decent enough job, I think, first of all, of doing the old Layne material, the original Alice in Chains material. And then he's not like just a Layne Staley clone, if you know what I mean. He actually brings something to the band. They've kind of evolved with him, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what was it, their new album, Dinosaurs? Yeah. Their latest album, Dinosaurs?
Yeah.
Do they have a new one? I can't keep up as much anymore.
I hear you, because you're busy with your own music.
Their album called Dinosaurs with William on it. I was like, that's 93 Alice in Chains again.
Yeah. And you know, Alice in Chains, I gotta say, is probably of all the grunge bands, probably the one I like the best, because I'm like an old school metal and hard rock guy, and to me, Alice in Chains, you can call it grunge or whatever, but they always had kind of a Sabbathy vibe to them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, they were doing things that a lot of people today are trying to replicate.
Yeah.
You know, and it's cool to watch. And it's actually cool to watch just music evolve in general.
Yeah.
From where it was 10 years ago to where it is today.
Well, you know, music has a cycle. Like every 10 years, it kind of, changes and evolves, as you say. I mean, I was one of those guys, like I told you, I grew up on old school metal and hard rock, and I was one that for a while kind of believed, grunge killed, all that great music. But I will say this, in kind of retrospect, I've had time to kind of see these bands for what they are. I will say, like any kind of music, every 10 years there's a cycle, like we're saying. But I would say, like with any form of music, of a cream kind of rose to the top. I mean, you had Nirvana, you had Soundgarden, you had Alice in Chains, you had Pearl Jam. These are kind of the grunge bands that kind of stuck around. And I think the reason for that, they were kind of the best of the from that time. I mean, and then all of a sudden you were having established bands getting dropped, from labels and stuff, and they're signing nothing but grunge bands, like a lot of copycat bands. But again, bands like Alice in Chains, those are ones that kind of stuck around because they had a little more than just trying to be a grunge band. I mean, they were kind of
put out a product in a time where, I mean,
something new. It didn't sound like
some of these bands just absolutely amaze me with their backstories and the fact that, like AC/DC, for instance. Yeah. Besides Black Ice, they haven't really put out a new album. And if you can tell me your favorite song off of Black Ice, I'll gladly shake your hand. Yeah, but they still have albums such as the Black Album and Hell's Bells that have literally been relevant for the last 30 years.
I mean,
and that amazes me. For you to put out a product 30 years ago and it still be relevant and enjoyed today, that's absolutely astounding.
I mean, as we sit here in 2020, I mean, we're sitting here talking, AC/DC's Back in Black, which is the very first album with Brian Johnson. That's 40 years old this year. Just think about that. 40th anniversary, Back in Black.
I think as far as having Brian Johnson, I don't think they could have got a better singer to replace Bon Scott with. And on top of that, they put out an album that is still relative and still highly enjoyed to this day. And you have to give those guys awesome respect.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up bands like AC/DC and and Alice in Chains that influenced you, because they're two totally different bands, but at the same time, I think part of a reason those bands have been able to kind of carry on without some of the original members, like Bon Scott, he died, and then obviously Layne Staley died, is because it's not like they were fired from their bands or anything, or their bands weren't getting along. The guy died, and that's kind of a hard thing. Nobody really has too much control over that when somebody dies. So I think fans are more accepting of that, like, okay, the band is carrying on, in his honor or whatever. So I think it's that's why a lot of these AC/DC fans and Alice in Chains fans have been a little more willing for the band to carry on, you know.
Yeah, and you know, the great thing about it is, you know, with both of those bands, neither one of them were disrespectful to the legacy of their singers either. You know, it wasn't like Alice in Chains started writing an album with William Duvall 2 days after Layne Staley died.
Yeah, a number of years.
They definitely gave the families time enough to grieve. You know, and I think that's going to be another thing you're going to see with Linkin Park soon.
Yeah.
You know, I think once the grieving process is over with Chester, I don't think they're ever going to find another singer to replace Chester, but I think you're going to start hearing more music come from Mike and the rest of the guys over there.
Yeah, and you know, that's another band that's interesting because I mean, you take these bands like, okay, let's start with Alice in Chains. Layne Staley dies of a drug overdose, and then you got like you said, Chester Bingham, and you got the singer from Soundgarden. You know, these
Kurt Cornell and Scott Weiland. I mean,
these guys, they all they're drug affected. You know, their drug abuse is what ultimately killed them. And a lot of these bands, I mean, like even Stone Temple Pilots, okay, you know, they've had revolving doors singers, but again, they're somehow able to carry on. And AC/DC, they're pretty much done. But from what I understand, they got like one more album in them. They found like a lot of guitar tracks that Malcolm Young left behind, and they're kind of putting together some type of album. It's supposed to come out this year. I think it's coming out next year instead. And they got all the guys that are still around kind of going to get back together, and it's supposed to go out on tour next year. So we'll see how that does, you know.
That's so awesome. You know, I actually got to catch AC/DC when they were doing their tour run with Axl Rose.
Yeah. And
I got to give it to Axl Rose.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people give him shit.
Yeah.
But hands down, 100% he was great with AC/DC.
And I think part of the reason for that is I think because he grew up on those guys and they were such a huge influence on him that first of all, when he got the job to do it, I think people were worried, is he gonna, you know, do like he does with the Guns N' Roses show? He's gonna come out late and he's gonna pull all this stuff. But I think part of the reason he didn't is he had so much respect for those guys, you know, and then he had the attitude maybe, well, you know, this isn't my band, so I got to kind of show up and get the respect that it deserves, you know. And so I think, you know, he was the right choice for that, and amazingly the fans kind of you know, took to that. And so I'm going to kind of be interested in seeing what it's like when they get back out on tour with Brian next year, you know.
I'm stoked.
Yeah. So let's get into a little more about your band now, Laynes Calling. I love that. I love that story. Kind of got off on a tangent there, but that makes for a great story. Now you guys just released your self-titled EP. I think that's the right choice too, making it a self-titled, being that it's the first release. It leaves people asking, okay, who is this band? And then when you tell them that story about the name of Laynes Calling, okay, so that's kind of a little background story there. And
yeah.
And I listened to the download of the album your publicist sent me, and I got to tell you, I only got one complaint with the album, and it's this. But it's a good complaint, I think, and it is this. I so much wish I had a full-length album from you guys and just 6 tracks. But the great thing about that is you leave your fans wanting more.
I literally just had this conversation 5 minutes before I called you.
Yeah.
Literally had this conversation 5 minutes before I called you. I said, you know what our number one complaint right now is?
Yeah.
And my drummer was like, what? I was like, our album is not long enough.
And that's a good thing, because a lot of times, like, even when I post these interviews I do, you know, people kind of say, oh, well, it's too long for me to listen all the way through. But I'm an old school guy. Like, I don't know how you are, but I mean, I grew up in a time where you would still buy physical CDs. You actually went to the this is back in the day when they actually had record stores, if you even know what that is.
Right.
You know, you hold a physical CD in your hand. You read the lyrics. You read the liner notes. Who played on the album. You look at the artwork. I mean, there's a thing to you know, back in the day. I mean, these days kids want everything kind of right now. And a lot of times I hear people talking, I'm not even going to buy the full album. You know, I'm not going to buy the album when it comes out. Nobody's buying CDs. I'm just going to buy the single. And I'm kind of like, you know what? Like I said, I want the full package. I love to have like a 10-song full-length CD, but in this case, I'm willing to get whatever I can get. You know, of a great band like you guys.
That's what was. It kind of confuses me about the music scene in a sense, because you know you have all these people that are like, yeah, let's support the local bands, let's support these bands, and everything. But you kind of start to sit back and see, you're like, y'all are saying that, but you know, your actions don't really reflect that it sucks because we are in a day and age of instant information.
And I will say this, Joey. That's why, even though you guys put out a 6-song EP, the 6 songs on there, I gotta tell people, it's what I like to call all filler, no killer. I mean, all killer, no filler. Excuse me. Meaning, everything on there is killer. Nothing is like a fill-in track or anything. So that part of it is, great. But I will say this. Also, I think bands have to come up with new ways to kind of get the word out and market. I mean, one of the best things I ever seen a band do was years ago. I went to see the band Tesla, and they'd release like a cover CD at like Volume 1 and Volume 2. You could go back in the days. You could go online, or you could even go in the store still, and you could buy Volume 1. But if you wanted to get Volume 2, you had to buy a ticket to go see the band when they came to your town. And when you walked into the concert hall, they'd hand the fans like a free copy of Volume 2 of their CD. So I mean, that's kind of a unique way of doing that stuff, but. Hey, it worked, I think. It got me.
Absolutely. I mean, I think as a band in today's current climate, you have to be able to adapt and adjust if you want to stay in this business for longer than a minute. And that's the great thing about us. Like, here's a fun story about you. Every city that I go to now, I bring my projector with me. Every hotel that I stay in, I shoot a projected video from YouTube, generally of one of our songs, onto the hotel building directly across from us. In every city.
Oh, wow. And have you ever had any issues come up with that? Like anybody say, hey, don't do that on our...
I mean, I've had a few people be like, hey, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah,
but kind of bright, but...
It's different. Yeah, that's a cool thing. I mean, and is that something you just thought, hey, that'd be cool to do, or somebody suggested to you?
Actually, the idea, when Avenged Sevenfold got ready to release The Stage a few years ago, I don't know if you remember this or not, but they did this little PR campaign. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, where they were just projecting the Death Bat logo on different buildings throughout the United States and different countries. They did one in London, they did one in New York and LA.
Wow.
And I was like, that's fucking genius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes you think that they must have had to get some kind of permission to do that. But if not, in any event, it's like a great form of advertising for the band,
I mean, I look at it this way. I'll get permission when I end up in jail.
Yeah. And I also kind of think it's interesting you're saying at the top of the interview that you kind of got your record deal before you even had a band together. I mean, so talk a little bit about how that happened. I mean, did you just kind of have a demo of your songs laying around that you kind of, like a rough demo?
I had nothing. So, Not Well was written, I just moved back from Florida. We were living with my sister-in-law at the time.
Wow.
Me and my wife went through this huge argument. And I was sitting out on the deck one day, and I just started putting pen to paper. Didn't really think of anything about it. My nephew had hit me up and was like, hey, man, why don't you come record some music with me? And I was like, okay, so I've been a guitar player since I was 14 years old. That's what I've always done, had never even thought about singing vocals. So I get over to his house, and I started writing these guitar riffs. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. And he was like, all right, well, when do you want to put lyrics to it? I was like, what do you mean, dude? I don't do lyrics. So between him and my wife, they finally got me talked into writing lyrics for Not Well. I put some lyrics down. Wasn't going to release the song at all. Just because, it was the first thing I'd ever done.
Oh, wow.
In an actual studio setting. And it was the first time I'd ever sang outside of, just doing it in the shower or hanging out at the house. So I was like, there's absolutely no way I'm going to put this out somewhere and let people destroy me online over it. But my wife, after about a year of convincing, finally, was like, why don't you put that out there? I was like, all right. And I agreed to it just so I could get her off my back and to leave me alone about it. Which is funny now because I actually owe her everything because of it. So I released the song. Like I said, within 3 days, Derek Dishon and Paul Crosby of Saliva hit me up and was like, hey, we really think you could do something with this.
Oh, wow. That's an amazing story. Now, what I love about that is, like, did you ever have any idea you could sing, or were you one of these guys that thought, no, I can't sing, or I don't have a talent to do that?
No, I never thought I was good at it.
Wow. I mean, it's amazing. Sometimes other people just they hear something that you can't hear in your own your own talent. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Like I've heard Dave Mustaine from Megadeth talk about the fact his whole thing with forming Megadeth was, he got kicked out of Metallica and he wanted to. Megadeth was almost like his revenge. I'm going to form a band that's bigger and better than what they're doing. But initially, he thought of himself just as a guitar player, and he couldn't really. He was unable to really find a lead singer to sing his material the way he wanted to do it. So somebody, I think it was his manager, suggested, Dave, why don't you just see if you can sing your songs? And he's like, I didn't even know I could sing. And then somebody told me, hey, you're a pretty good singer. So, I mean, a lot of people have that same experience, and it's kind of unique because I did read the press release the published that you're primarily a guitar player all your life, and then a few years ago you took a shot at singing. That's now, did you ever have any like initial thoughts of like, I'm a guitar player, I'll just put out like maybe an instrumental album or something like that?
It never really crossed my mind in that aspect. I think once Not Well was released, I was just kind of, I honed in. I was like, you know what, we got to get, Pavement had offered us a 5-year distribution deal with them. So I was like, okay, I need to get something over to them so I'm not just wasting their time. Yeah, well,
I got to tell you, this is a cool, I love hearing stories like this because it's so like you say, I have things happen to me that, in threes and stuff and all this. And I mean, the fact that you get a deal without even really having a band, that says volumes right there about your talent to me. And
it's really cool, and I owe Tim King a lot today. Yeah. Just for the simple fact that he believed in me and us before anybody even knew there was a me and us.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I never met Tim King, but I'm a fan of his music, that he does with Soil. But one thing I think about the label you're signed to, it's a great little label, I'll tell you, for a lot of reasons. But Tim King being a guy that made it, making metal music, you'd expect that he'd have a label where they sign nothing but metal acts. I mean, he's got everything from rap acts, even Candlebox is a big alternative band back in the 90s when they came back. He signed them to Pavement. So that's the cool thing is there's a different kind of acts for everybody, on the Pavement label. And that's one thing I really love about them,
Yeah, it's a really cool little family, I'm not going to lie. I'm actually up here in Chicago now, and getting ready to swing by there tomorrow morning, so...
Yeah, and the cool thing too about Tim King being involved with Pavement is like I dig the fact that you got a guy that's involved that's an actually musician himself. He's lived the life as opposed to just being signed to a label that's signed that it's owned by some rich businessman knows nothing about the music business. So I think and they've got a pretty good track record at this point of the bands that they've signed and been successful with.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, that's just. And let me ask you. So when you released this song initially, what was the kind of responses you were getting online once you posted online? I mean, because it's one thing for your wife to say, "Hey, I think you should write the vocals and write the lyrics and sing the vocals yourself." Yeah. But when we started reading what people were posting online, I mean that, and I'm sure it must have been positive, like you said. So for you to go forward. So what was that like? You're like, oh, all these people.
It was surreal. So, like I said, within 3 days, sir, you trying to figure this out. But even better than that, REVERBNATION, I'd never even heard of this.
Oh, that's another. That's
before I had released Not Well.
Wow.
And one of my friends was like, "No, you really got to start pushing REVERBNATION." Promoters really look at that. I was like, "All right." So I went ahead and put Not Well on there, and this goes back to the things always happen in threes.
Wow.
Literally within 3 days of Not Well being on REVERBNATION, it was #1 on every one of their charts.
Oh, see now, dude, you gotta write all this stuff down because I tell you, just talking to you about it, I mean, for you to get signed to a label like Pavement like 3 days after you post a song in that and going #1 before it's even released on an album. I mean, that is a great part of your story. I mean, you gotta. I mean, it's just amazing to me, to hear this.
Here's the cool thing about all of this, and I come from a very small town, man.
Yeah.
Literally, my graduating high school class was 200 people.
Yeah.
So it came from a very small town where the chances of you making it out and doing anything with your life are very slim to none. 9 out of 10 people that grow up in my small town end up addicted to some form of hard drug. Whether it be heroin or meth, whatever. But 9 out of 10 people literally end up on that from where I'm from. So, I've kind of used Layne's calling thing as a way to inspire people from that place, you know. And I try to tell everybody, even in my social media posts, you know, if you're giving up on your dreams, the only person to blame is yourself.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, it's an amazing story, and then also just again to go back to the band's name, Layne Staley. It's named after one of your heroes, you know, that unfortunately died of a drug overdose. You know, with your music, you can get your music out there and tell people, you know, this guy influenced me. The only thing with him is, you know, he'd still be here living the rock and roll dream if he didn't, you know, if he didn't let drugs take over his life so much, you know. And like you said, with your music, you could have a positive effect on people's lives.
And that's the main goal. I mean, you referenced it earlier. You said filler, not filler. That was the main goal with this EP. I went into the studio and I made sure that I wasn't just writing things to put an EP out as fast as I could. Yeah. I sit down and it took me almost 2 years
to
get everything together the way I wanted it. Just for the simple fact that once it released, I wanted people to hear it and go, you know what, that's exactly what we've been missing. Not, you know what, they just threw that on.
So I know the EP just came out last week, I believe on Friday, September 4th. Can people actually get physical copies if they want, or is it just digitally right now?
Actually, unfortunately, due to the whole COVID situation, the people who press all of our stuff, they're a little backed up right now. But as soon as they are printing full force, we will have physical copies of the album.
Yeah. So let me ask you about that. The COVID-19 stuff. It's got everybody right now kind of locked up and not able to go out and do really too many live shows. So how is that affecting you? And do you think maybe we'll just have enough time to put together, you know, like another EP or another CD or something?
Funny you brought that up. At the beginning of the whole COVID thing, I actually went and sat down and worked on a new track with Paul Crosby.
Oh, wow.
It's absolutely killer. We didn't put it on the EP, but it will be released sometime later this year.
Oh, And like, do you think there's a chance that you might release that track digitally before maybe the next release comes out?
Probably not in the next week or so.
No, but like a couple months. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm sorry. I was just saying probably like you maybe wait a couple months or even maybe till sometime next year, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to give people time to listen to the EP and digest that for what it is, and you know, give them enough time to get back and reflect on it before I start pushing more stuff down their throat.
Oh yeah, I give them time to kind of live with it. But I tell you this much, I got to tell people listening to this that the 6 songs on there that I listen to. You know, it's kind of interesting when you listen to like an album for the first time. You're trying to figure out what does this remind me of, and you know, what does this sound like. I will say this: now that you told me you're kind of influenced by Alice in Chains, I could hear a little bit of that. But I gotta say, for the most part, you got really a fresh, original sound, and you do sound like to me because a guy that oddly enough started out as nothing but a guitar player. It seems like when I listen to your lyrics, they're kind of deep. And I am taking that because maybe, you know, when you write the songs, these are things you either live through or that you believe in, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of interesting. So maybe you're kind of meant to be a singer because, like a lot of people, maybe you do a better job of, if you're going to write a song, you can sing it more from the heart than if you have somebody else singing your lyrics, if you know what I mean.
For sure.
Yeah. And so I would just say this, like, the other thing I noticed about the whole CD or you know, EP or whatever you want to call it is it's not exactly metal. It's not. I mean, it's got metal elements. It's got alternative elements to it. But what I dig, like you got songs like my top 3 were "Die for It," "Break Me," and "Last Fall." And like you go from the extreme of something like "Die for It" to "Last Fall," but there's a little something on there for everybody, if you know what I mean.
Exactly, and that, you know, when people ask me, hey, what's the album about? You know, it's got something on there for everybody. If you like rap, there's something on there for you. If you like country, there's something on there for you. If you like hard rock, there's something on there for you.
Yeah,
you know, I've never tried to close myself in a box and, you know, stuck to a specific formula when I write.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing you say about like a band like AC/DC. They kind of, you know, did put themselves in a box where you can put on any AC/DC song and it's almost like the same 3 chords, but at the same time it's AC/DC. So, you know, fans love that for what it is. But again, there's a little more depth, I think, to kind of what you're doing, and even some of the heavier stuff, like maybe a song like "Die for It." I mean, the other thing is, even some of the heavier songs, they got melody to it. You know, it's not like it's not full blown on metal. It's not like Slayer.
Even when I send it, I don't send it.
yeah. But like last fall, I really dug that. I thought that could be like kind of a radio hit, if you know what I mean, and it probably will. Like the fact that you tell me one song just went #1 on REVERBNATION. That's where a lot of young people go for music these days, and that's how I discover a lot of bands. Is just I have things coming up on REVERBNATION. Okay, I'll check that out.
Yeah. Dude, I gotta say, REVERBNATION, it's kind of one of those things where I didn't focus on it so much because I know a lot of people, they look at the Spotify numbers, they look at, the Pandora numbers, and that's cool, I like knowing that people can add my stuff to their playlist, but with REVERBNATION, I feel like it's almost a little more organic, because it's not nearly as highly publicized as some of the other things, so, if you're finding me on REVERBNATION, that's because you took the time to sit down and look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the longer you're around, you're going to find other ways to network your music and other sites like that, because the longer you're on social media, you start to discover this stuff, and it's kind of, it's kind of interesting, like you said, because REVERBNATION, I mean, you're not going to find like a truckload of established bands that you've heard of before, and that's the cool.
You're not going to find the Five Finger Death Punches or the Megadeths or the Iron Maiden.
Yeah. And so
you're going to find some fucking killer bands that are up and coming
that you've never heard of.
They just need a little push, and you could be that little push.
Yeah, and then you're gonna start saying, hey, not only was our band featured on REVERBNATION, we were featured on Spotify or whatever, or even they got these great internet like radio shows and radio stations that you just start networking. You're gonna start finding people that are willing to kind of play your music or do an interview with you and stuff, and I think that's the one thing that's kind of the power of the internet. I mean, a couple years back, a lot of the major record companies, when they started dropping a lot of the bands, like I was saying, like especially during the grunge era, they ruined it for themselves because a lot of bands, they don't even have, it's like, what is a record deal? That's why a lot of bands just release stuff independently. They own all the rights. It's a lot harder kind of But if you start making money, the CD starts selling, the money, you get to keep all the money from the band, as opposed to having to pay the record company and everybody else a piece.
I am all about if you're an independent artist and that's the way you want to go about it, I'm all for it, 100%. I think that's great. Yeah. I think it's awesome if you can do that.
Yeah.
Like Tom McDonald, for instance. Yeah. I'm not a great big fan of his music by any means. Yeah. But as far as an artist and a businessman, I have the utmost respect for that man.
Yeah.
When he had labels knocking on his door, he was like, you know what? I think I'm going to continue doing my own thing.
Yeah.
And 100% awesome respect for the man. And now I think he just topped out at #1 last week.
Wow.
And,
yeah.
And he has no major label backing him. That's almost unheard of.
Yeah.
For an independent artist to be able to go to the top of the Billboard rock chart or Billboard hip hop charts, especially when you have the people like Cardi B and fucking Nicki Minaj. No offense to them as artists, but they've got millions of dollars of promotion behind.
Yeah.
But then you have somebody like Tom McDonald who's self-funding everything, and he's doing this on a big scale. It gives me hope for the independent artists out there. I'm not gonna lie. One of the great things that I've loved about being part of a label was having that
push.
Having that push.
Because the other thing about like even up to like a year ago, dealing with if you were signed to a label like Pavement Entertainment, I mean they have, like I said, they have a great roster of artists, and I've seen in the past where a lot of those bands have gone together that are signed to Pavement, and they've done shows together and even tours. So for that reason alone, you got just a huge pool of talent.
The support's phenomenal. We actually I just got done talking to one of our other label mates, Salem's Child, who has a release coming out October 9th. Yeah. And I was like, hey, as soon as this COVID stuff's over, let's
like your publicist, your publicist Barbara, she's always sending me great bands, from Pavement to interview, and I say, send them my way. Anything you have, we're willing to check out, and that's kind of what it's about too. Is spreading love for the new bands out there.
Absolutely, man. You know, and that I love it. I love seeing the support that most music, and I say most, that 95% of musicians show to each other, hands down. You know, that's great. Don't get me wrong. I've met those rock stars that have the rock star mentality. I won't mention names, but I've definitely met those guys, and it's sad because they leave a sour taste in your mouth. You know, at the end of the day, dude, outside of Layne's calling, I also do stagehand work for the local stagehand union in Louisville.
But
so I've done some of the biggest production tours that have hit the road.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got to do Metallica and Kiss in the same week, which was amazing.
Wow.
And I can tell you this, you know, a lot of people it's funny, I try to bring this up anytime I talk to somebody, you know, a lot of people will hate on a band just for the simple fact that they're big and they're popular.
Yeah, I used to laugh, like, Metallica, people would say, like, especially after they released the Black Album, oh man, they cut their hair. They sold out. They're doing commercial stuff. They're all over MTV or all over the radio. I'm like, well, isn't that kind of a
that's the point.
The point. You want to be all over the place.
We want to be I don't want to say in the limelight, so to speak. But we want to be relevant if we want to have a career that lasts longer than a year.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I remember Metallica, the bass player Jason Newsted that used to be in the band. He said on MTV one day in an interview, I remember him saying, "Yeah, you bet we sold out. We were selling out every night. Yeah, and we loved it. You know, I mean, that's kind of a goal. You know,
when they played the Yum Center, for one, they had the biggest attendance in the Yum Center history. They've had some of the biggest acts ever to come through. So to be able to have, and not only that, they had Kiss following them 2 nights later. Who also, don't get me wrong, they packed a fucking house. Still didn't come close to the Metallica numbers. Wow. So, and the greatest thing about that is I was pushing a deck cart for the stage out of the VIP room.
Wow.
And Lars and Rob Trujillo happened to be on the outside of there, and they were talking to Gene Simmons.
Wow.
From Kids. And as I'm pushing this deck cart, Rob goes, "Oh, my back." And I turned around, I was like, "Dude, please don't make those noises. I can't afford those problems." You know,
wow.
They all cracked up and laughed, you know, and shook my hand. Super awesome guys, you know, and you would think, hey, you know, these guys don't have to do that. They're bigger than life. They played on Antarctica. They could go back to the bus and be just fine.
Yeah, I think especially a guy like Rob Trujillo maybe is more like that maybe than other guys even because, you know, when he came in and took the place of Jason Newsted, I mean, probably, you know, the biggest thing he had done at that point was he's in another thrash band, Suicidal Tendencies, and they weren't quite on the same level as Metallica, but they had their own little following. And he did some touring with Ozzy, obviously, but you know, up until that point, like Metallica, I think when I heard when they offered him to join the band, they offered him some crazy amount of money to join the band, and his life, you know, from that point on, he hasn't had to worry about too much in his life. You know, he's pretty much taken care of for the rest of his life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
and the fact that they still take the time to sit down with their fans, you know, even small interactions like that, you know, that was nothing big.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was big enough to leave an impression in my mind, and that's the thing that I really hate when you go out to some of these shows and you see these guys who want to act louder or bigger than life and like these big rock stars. That's cool and all.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you want to still be selling albums next year?
Yeah. It's amazing.
You know, what kind of impression are you leaving your fans when they leave your show?
Yeah.
So I can tell you from a personal experience, if my fans don't leave my show and say, "Dude, did you see that fucking drummer? Or did you see the singer launching off stage?" If they don't leave with that, then I didn't do my job.
Yeah, I got to tell you, like, just the band's name, I mean, there's so much to the story you've told me so far that I've loved. I mean, a couple of things that just stick with me. You told me, like, it's something in your life where things happen in threes, and that's kind of a crazy thing, but, I mean, you should almost sit there and make a list about it, or almost, you know, even maybe write a song. I mean...
my wife has begged me to write a book about this stuff for the last 5 years.
I mean...
My problem is, I can write a song, but I am way too ADHD to sit down and write an entire book.
Yeah, well, maybe write a song about it, but you know, so something like that kind of sticks in my head when I hear it, and then you tell me, you know, I played guitar most of my life. My wife kind of pushed me to become a singer. My song went #1, you know, before I even had a record deal. I mean, this is incredible stuff, you know, and even Layne's Calling, when I heard the band's name, I thought, oh, that must be, maybe that's named after a street or something. So people hear Layne's calling, oh, what's that? But that's going to kind of just bring people closer to what the band's really about, and who influenced you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was really cool. One of the first shows that we actually played as Layne's Calling, I did a cover of Rooster.
Oh, wow.
Somehow, some way, that cover of Rooster made its way to Jerry Cantrell's guitar pad.
Wow.
Which also made it to Jerry Cantrell. I ended up getting a message from Jerry's guitar tech one day. He was like, dude, we'll let you know, Jerry's really digging your shit.
Wow, who knows? I mean,
and I was like, that? Are you serious?
Yeah, I mean, talk about the power of the internet. I mean, you would never even think that somebody like Jerry Cantrell or his tech would be listening and to pass the word on to him, about.
Yeah,
hey,
it's crazy that somebody just happened to shoot a video of me doing this at a show.
Yeah.
And apparently they just happen to know. How often does that happen?
And then it's one thing for his tech to kind of mention it, but then he must have thought enough of it to take the time out of his busy schedule to call you,
Yeah. So, just to sit down and be like, hey, Jerry, check this out.
Yeah.
And, and that's the kind of things where, later on down the road, and I try to tell this to everybody, one of the things that I attribute to our success so much is the fact that, for one, I've never met a stranger, and for two, everybody that I do meet, I treat them with the utmost dignity and respect.
Well, there you go. And, other thing about Jerry Cantrell is, and you being influenced by Alice in Chains, is he was very much involved with a lot of his songwriting, and so that's why
95% of their songs, if you look at it, it says written by Jerry Cantrell.
Yeah, and that's why, too, and he's a huge part of a vocal style. Even though Layne was the lead singer, I mean, he did a lot of lead singing.
Without Jerry's harmonies, you don't have a Layne.
Because that's what I was going to say. Very much like with the classic Van Halen. Michael Anthony was the background sound of Van Halen, and people may not think that's a big deal, but like you said, okay, it's one thing you take the lead singer dies, and you're going to decide to carry on, but like you said, Jerry Cantrell was such a big part of that Alice in Chains sound. That's why I think they've been able to carry on so successfully.
Oh, absolutely. I 100% am a firm believer that anything that ever happened to Jerry Cantrell, Alice in Chains wouldn't be Alice in Chains anymore.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And it's final thing I'm going to touch on before we wrap this up is talk a little bit about your songwriting, because very much like Jerry Cantrell, I think just listening to stuff that's on your album, the 6-track, you're quite a gifted songwriter, and it's kind of interesting to hear that you haven't been writing songs all that long, but what you came up with was pretty good to my ears, and I was curious, so are these songs that you've just written over the last couple of years, or did you have any of them laying around?
So a little bit into my writing process, a lot of my songs have double meanings behind them, and when I say that, what a particular song I may have written with a particular message in mind, I try to write them in such a way that people can relate to that no matter what kind of pain they're feeling.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of my stuff is taken from experiences that I had in Afghanistan or while I was in the military.
Oh wow, see?
So what I try to do is, instead of just, pushing the patriotic red, white, and blue American Eagle down your throat, I try to do it in such a way that, even though that song may explain my military experience to me, it may speak to you on a completely different level.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's the case with a lot of people, because a lot of the favorite songs, I grew up listening to. Artists wrote about one thing, but I listened to it. I might, like you said, I might get something totally different out of that song based on my own life experience. And for you as a songwriter, that's got to be a pretty cool thing. I mean, you might have written one of these songs about something entirely different. Have a fan come to you and say, that song you wrote really touched me, or it really reminded me when my husband was killed in a car accident or something, and I think about how much he meant to me, blah blah blah. And you're like, well, that's not what I wrote it, but hey, if you got that out of a song, that's great for you.
The greatest thing, and I can't say thank you to our fans enough for this, and I truly mean this from the bottom of my heart. I would give anything to get that feeling back again. The greatest thing in the world for me is Not Well is obviously a song about my mental breakdowns, what brings me to my knees.
Yeah. Oh wow.
And my drummer actually, his wife works in the psychiatric field as well as my wife.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I really wanted Not Well to do was people that are going through those hard mental times and they're just they're at their lowest and they're ready to give up and they're because I've been there. I've been that guy with a loaded pistol in my mouth, ready to end it all. Yeah. And one of the greatest feelings in the world is when somebody messages me or one of my band members and says, you know what, I was in a really bad spot last night and I put Not Well on and it saved my life.
Oh,
or
wow.
It kept me from doing something that I was going to regret later.
Oh wow, that's powerful right there.
Yeah. So and it doesn't matter. A great thing about this, and I tell everybody this at every show: if you're going through a hard time, if you're struggling mentally, and you just can't get that help and you can't get it out, feel free to contact me or one of my guys.
Oh wow.
I promise you, I don't care if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, or 12 o'clock at night. Yeah. I will answer my phone and we'll talk through it together.
And so, I got to ask what year did was Laynes Calling as a band? What year did the project first come together?
2018.
Oh wow! So you just got all this in the last 2 years? That's great. Wow.
And really, if you want to look at it, really think about it, it's really happened hard in the last 6 months because the last year and a half was all spent writing.
Yeah, So that was going to be my next question. Have you guys, outside of like a rehearsal or a recording studio, had a chance to play out live, or is that kind of a next step?
Actually, we played a cancer benefit show
for
one of our really good musician buddies, Ryan Preston, 2 weekends ago. Great turnout. We were able to raise several $1,000s for him. He has a rare tissue cancer.
Oh, okay.
Which I think like 1 in 12 million people are actually diagnosed with this.
Oh, wow.
So he was given a 40-week treatment plan, and it was really cool to watch the entire music scene from Louisville come together to put this together for him.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And speaking of live shows, we actually have LRS Fest in Louisville coming up October 3rd that we are headlining.
Oh, wow.
So if y'all are dying for some shows, we have went above and beyond to make sure that this is going to be one of the safest shows that you're going to attend this year. All social distancing guidelines are going to be enforced, masks are enforced. Another thing I want to tell our fans that you show up to LRS Fest, we are going to be hanging out at the merch booth after the show, but we're not taking pictures. We're, hugging you. No offense to them. We just want to make sure that everybody's as safe as they possibly can.
Yeah. I mean, that to me, that's one of the strangest things you have to get used to. It's almost like you got that human nature to want to shake people's hands, and you got to remember, no, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, it's I try to tell everybody I'm doing fist bumps now.
Yeah.
And it's cool, but I'm not gonna lie, it sucks. I'm one of those people. I like making those connections with people. I like, I want to know that when you come out to a show that every expectation you had was met and more, and then when you go home, hey man, I got to hang out with the singer of Layne Staley, or I got to hang out with the drummer of Layne Staley. They were just super down to earth.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, sometimes you just got to adjust to these things, unfortunately. I mean, like we're getting to the point as far as, I live in Southern California right now. The governor here is telling us, I don't know if we're ever going to allow the movie theaters in California open up or even have live concerts. And so right now where I'm living, we're kind of dealing with that. So I think if you're fortunate enough to live in a state where they're even beginning to think about allowing concerts of some kind to take place, go for it.
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
A lot of the concerts that are happening right now are kind of flying under the radar.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've tried to remain real neutral with is, everybody's got a different perception and a different view on the COVID situation.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for going to shows. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for not going to shows.
Yeah, I think it kind of should be left in the people's hands. If as far as do what you think is safe for you.
Absolutely,
and don't spread it. But I think if you follow those guidelines, it shouldn't be too hard to figure it out.
I mean, obviously we're taking steps now that are, they're out from the normal that we're used to.
Yeah.
But I look at it as this is going to be the new normal. Masks are going to be a new normal.
That's the best. That's the best way to put it. And if you're able to find a way to get out there and do live shows, go for it. Because what's the alternative?
Exactly. And that's another thing. People aren't, like you just said. the governor's talking about not even reopening movie theaters or having concerts again.
Yeah, I mean, that's a shame.
Where are people going to get their live entertainment now? You know, the entertainment business accounts for $33 billion.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Los Angeles, you know, like an hour away from, well, 45 minutes away from like where the Sunset Strip is. A lot of those clubs, you know, they haven't been able to open for the past 7 or 8 months. A lot of those clubs are in danger of closing up, you know. It's sad. It's very sad.
It is very sad because, like you just said, some of my favorite clubs are on that strip.
I mean, like, we have a legendary, I'm sure you've heard of it, Whiskey A Go Go, where bands like Van Halen and The Doors got their start.
That's one of the Whiskey and the Rainbow Room are the two that I majorly, those are my two favorite ones down there. Yeah,
well, who knows? Maybe one day things start up again. I mean, you get a chance to play some of those bigger places.
Well, maybe. We'll be there. COVID or not, we'll be there.
Yeah.
If I have to play out front of the club, we'll be there.
Well, I'm starting to see like ads even on Facebook for shows coming up, so I think it kind of just depends on what the current situation is, but hopefully they'll get back to it. That's what I'm hoping for.
You know, I try to tell everybody, I think we're at the stage now where coronavirus isn't going to be eradicated. Yeah. It's too late for that. It's always going to be around now. I think we're going to get to the point where it's going to be more like the flu than it is as scary as it is.
Yeah, find a way to live with it, yeah.
Yeah. But exactly, we're going to find a way to live with it, just like we had the flu, just like SARS, just like West Nile. Yeah. You know, all of these crazy things that are meant to kill humans.
Yeah.
We adapt.
I mean,
we survive and adapt.
I think the funniest thing that took place in regards to all this in 2020 was when it first started. Is like going to the store and having people like hoard toilet paper and water and only be limited to how much you could buy. Like, I mean, I actually got to a point where I had to go buy like $30 worth of toilet paper because it's all they had. They only had one size. I mean, wow.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, dude. It gets kind of aggravating when I go to my local gun store and I can't pick up ammo.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, especially when you watch that stuff, those riots on TV, and they're telling you they're peaceful, and you see all this stuff going on. Okay, that's cool. Whatever. My eyes are.
I'm not going to touch on that subject.
No, I got you. Well, we'll keep it to the music, but
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, now you obviously mentioned Alice in Chains there and AC/DC. Are there any other bands or singers specifically or guitar players that kind of influenced you when you were growing up?
Mark Tremonti.
Oh wow.
And one of my favorite guitar players to ever pick up a guitar.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
And I know it's probably not one of the normal that you hear. Well, a lot of people are like the Van Halens or the Dimebag Darrells are the ones that really influenced them. And don't get me wrong, those guys definitely had an influence on my music.
Well, Joey, we're talking to Joey Cox today. This is a Joey Cox story, so it doesn't matter what other people were influenced by.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but it was something about Mark's playing, and I think it was after the Alter Bridge thing started. I think that was when I was like, wow, this dude. And I don't know if it was because he was able to showcase more. Yeah. I know if you ever look back at the first Creed albums, you could tell it was there. Yeah. But it was like, it was very reserved. If you look at Mark now in Alter Bridge, you're like, wow, where had that been 15 years ago?
And what do you think of the stuff he did with his solo project, Tremonti?
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty modern, but that's cool. And I think you mentioned this earlier, but since you're so heavily influenced by Alice in Chains, I got to ask, is there like one album like Alice in Chains that if somebody came up and said, I'm not too familiar with Alice in Chains, like what would be your go-to album for them? You point to that and say,
ooh, he's gonna hit me with the hard one.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I would honestly, I'm probably going to have to go with the Unplugged album.
Oh, there you go. I mean, that would be a good one, too, because, first of all...
It has a variety of everything from all the albums.
That's why it's so different, because it's unplugged,
Yeah, exactly. And it's, dude, from start to finish, it's just one of those killer performances that, even today, here we are 20 years later, and we're still talking about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like I said, my introduction to Alice in Chains was, you can't get too much heavier than like Man in the Box, Rooster, stuff like that. But like I also dug some of the metal stuff, like Heaven Beside You, I Stay Away. and those are big MTV hits and stuff. And it's kind of amazing, because I've been seeing a lot of stuff about, MTV, like MTV celebrating 39 years of being a network, but they actually only had
10 years of music.
14 years of or something like that. 14 years of music, I think it was. And it's funny because back, I don't know how old you were, but back in the day, I was young enough at the time where, like, I was around when MTV was a new thing, and they played nothing but music videos, and then they kind of morphed into a reality network, and they just one day stopped playing, music videos. I interviewed the drummer from Trickster not too long ago, and he was telling me, because he said Trickster actually had the last #1 video on MTV that they ever played.
Wow. and it's funny that you bring that up.
Yeah.
I remember being a kid in TRL.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Carson Daly.
Yeah. I remember
seeing him on there. I remember, and actually, I'll never forget how I got introduced to Linkin Park.
How's that?
I was 10 years old, 10 or 11, and I had woken up at like 3 a.m. in the morning. Just one of those random getting out of fucking bed, and I couldn't go back to sleep, so, you turn on TV, and I'm flipping this channel at 3 a.m., and the video for One Step Closer comes on.
Oh, wow.
And I remember seeing this fucking guy with the red spikes, and I remember seeing Chester with his blonde fucking spikes, and then you had the Hybrid Theory soldiers in the background that were just doing these fucking flips in the air, and I was like,
wow.
That is the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Wow.
Like, as a 10-year-old kid, you're seeing this on MTV, and I was just like, and it starts.
Wow, yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah, and I remember, like, I remember when MTV like first started having Headbangers Ball, and before the world ever heard of Ricky Rackman or anybody like that, they actually had one of these original DJs on, or VJs they called them, Adam Curry, and they thought he looked like a metal guy because he kind of looked like Bon Jovi and had super long hair, so they put him on. But you look at old clips of that when Headbangers Ball first came on with him, like, oh, that looks kind of cheesy, but it was great at the time for what it was. And then eventually they got Ricky Rackman, who was big in the Hollywood scene, and he kind of took over what became Headbangers Ball,
Right?
Yeah.
And now you've got Don Jameson, who's doing, dude, I actually got to catch him when we played with Pop Evil.
Wow.
What was it, like last year?
Uh-huh.
Probably one of the funniest comedians I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah, him and the other guy.
Had me laughing from the start of his set to the end of his set, and that doesn't happen. Like, I can always find something that a comedian hits on that I'm just like, eh.
Yeah.
But he was one of those where I was just in tears the entire time. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, I would say him. Yeah, I would say him and Jim Florentine, who he often does shows with, because they used to be on that metal show with Eddie Trunk.
Yep.
They were the closest thing I can. I would call it like rock and roll comedians, because closest thing we've had to anything like that since Sam Kinison. Yeah. And
dude, it is amazing that you even can mention that name.
Yeah.
That I don't think I've ever heard in all of the interviews that I've done.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody mention that name. So
yeah, I go back a while. Yeah, that dates me, but yeah. I mean, he was one of even back, probably the most rock and roll comedy I ever had before that. You had Sam Kinison at the time, you had Andrew Dice Clay, but I leaned a little more towards Sam Kinison, because I liked the fact that he was kind of like you, in the sense that although he didn't grow up to become a lead singer, he put that did that great video of Wild Thing, and he got all his metal friends in it, and Sam, he wasn't a great lead singer, but he did a decent enough job. I mean, look at what the success he had with that Wild Thing video. I mean, so you gotta give the man some credit, for what he did. Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, dude, I have respect for every artist. I really do. Just because I may not listen to Cardi B or Nicki Minaj doesn't mean I'll ever take away from the fact that both of them have had #1 hits, and Yeah, like, I'm not a huge fan of rap music either, but I'll tell you this. I could never come up with half those raps that those guys come up with. So no, not at all.
And I'm not a musician myself, so anybody that can write a song or get up on stage and even do like what you do with your band, I got huge respect for. And
well, we really appreciate that, man.
Yeah, and the last thing before we wrap this up, I'm going to say is, and I know I've been doing this a lot, talking a lot today, but just I so into your story, and I will say this.
Hey, man, I enjoy talking to you, so that works out.
Yeah. But I will say this too, that the music, like I said, you leave your fans wanting so much more, and that's never a bad thing, I don't think, you know.
I think it's one of those things where in today's day and age, it can be a very good thing, but at the same time, it can be a very bad thing if we're not releasing stuff soon. For the simple fact, like I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, everybody's attention span's about 2 seconds long now because we are in that age of instant information.
Yeah.
If I'm not putting stuff out every 6 months, chances are our fans are going to start to forget about us.
Yeah, I mean, there are all ways you could market the band. I mean, one thing just popped in my head as I'm talking is, like I said, one thing that stuck to me through this whole interview is you're telling me not just about the band's name, but the fact that things just have a way of continuously happening to you, and in threes, you should like hold a contest or something, like, hey, have the fans write in, whatever, is this true for you? What are the craziest 3 things that ever happened to you,
right? And that's cool that you lock into stuff like that, because we do the same thing sitting here in our truck. Me and my drummer, we do a bunch of Lowe's stores and stuff when we're not out on the road, obviously.
Yeah.
So we get a lot of free time to sit here and talk in the truck, and these are things that me and him are actually talking about. So that's somebody that I'm actually interviewing with that comes up with stuff like that. It's awesome. I'm not going to lie. It's really cool to talk to somebody else outside the band that's also like, yeah, here's some cool things that you can do too.
Yeah, and I mean, even when you're doing other interviews, that's the stuff I think you should be bringing up, because that's really what got my attention. That and hey, the song went to #1 before it was even a record deal, and a few days later we got a record deal. So it's just a great story, and as time goes on, you're going to have other tales to tell. So I just want to thank you once again, Joey, for taking time to talk to me. It's really...
Hey, man, I thank you for taking time out of your day and, actually wanting to interview us, dude. And hands down, I'm going to put it this way. This has been one of my more enjoyable interviews that I've done. Most of the time I get the very cookie-cutter questions. How did Layne's calling start? Where did you start? What's your plans for tomorrow? And don't get me wrong, I'll never get tired of answering those questions. Well, it's nice to have somebody who thinks outside the box and is coming up and have questions that are actually challenging me to think.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a funny story about that before we go. Is I've been doing these interviews since 2007. I started out like a lot of people, like just doing email interviews, and then got to the point where people said, "Why don't you just give me a call? We'll do it over the phone." So we started doing it that way. But when I first started doing phone interviews, here's a funny story. I would kind of script it in the sense that I'd sit down. Okay, I'm gonna have all my questions prepared. I'm gonna plan out what I'm gonna ask, and then I'd sit there and listen back to it. And it sounds too robotic, And so I learned over time doing these things. It's best to just kind of let it rip and talk like you're talking to an old friend or something.
Let it have that human element, man.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. People connect with the human element of things. If it sounds scripted, most people are just like, okay, cool.
I'm going to tune out.
They put hours in.
Yeah,
it sounds professional.
Yeah.
But there's no real human connection there.
Yeah. And I think that's part of what turned me onto your music is as I listen to the songs, they're just such great rhythm songs. I mean, and it's unique to find out that you're not a guy that's been writing songs all these years, or yet all these songs laying around. And I think that's why it has such a fresh appeal. Like I can tell you right from the heart.
I do. And my drummer, we talk about this quite often. He's like, dude, I don't know what kind of formula you got going on right now, but
keep it up. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I don't have a formula. Every song on the EP, and I'm sure there's going to be those that try to call me out on this later on.
Yeah.
Every song on that EP, I went into the studio with nothing in mind.
Wow. Yeah.
I literally would call my nephew up and be like, hey, man, you got time to record? And I might get there and not have a single thing thought out. But by the time I leave there, I'll at least have a song done.
So when you guys record, are you actually in the same room, or do you do like a lot of modern day bands and you record separately, or you record over the phone even?
Well, with the EP, it was actually just separate. Me and my nephew sit down and we tracked all the guitar parts and went back through and did the bass and all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I built the band around that, unfortunately. But now we're going back into the studio where the entire band have a chance to right, and now everybody's really going to get to hear what the real Layne song sounds like.
And you think on the next release, I mean, this kind of happened organically. It started out as, you know, a one-man project, and you got your band together. Do you think next time when you go in and record that it'll be more of a band effort, you know, where everybody kind of gets a chance to try to contribute songwriting?
Oh, yeah, and that's absolutely, that's the goal, man. You know, I want everybody, and that's the thing with doing it now. It's kind of awkward, I guess, so to speak, because, I did write all the music or whatever. Yeah. But, you know, I've got some really killer musicians beside me. Like, literally, I couldn't do this without these guys.
Yeah, because I think that's going to be the hard thing is next time around, you always want there to be some kind of progression. But, like, when you start out and you're a sole songwriter, it's got to be hard to kind of let other people come in. You know, you're like, oh.
It's hard to trust somebody with a baby that you've raised, so to speak. But at the same time, when you're surrounded by a great group of guys like I am that all have 20 plus years doing this thing, you know, it makes it that much easier and that much enjoyable
to create beautiful music. And this is really the final thing I'm going to say. You know, we're talking about COVID, and a lot of bands have not been able to get out there and perform live like they used to. So I've seen a lot of bands doing stuff online, like maybe doing live stuff from a studio, or, you know, like a live concert from the backyard. Have you guys given any thought to doing anything like that?
Actually, we had, and then Facebook decided to update their terms of use.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. You said that. Yeah, I just read about it. I forgot, but I think that's starting October 1st. But in any event, a friend of mine was telling me.
I had thought about it, and it's great in theory. You know, I want to get out there and do live shows for people. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm not gonna lie. I don't want to play on a stage with nobody in the crowd. It just seems like an over glorified rehearsal to me.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a sad thing about. But you know, it's very sad because, like you said, that's kind of been becoming the new norm for now. And I thought it's an interesting way of doing things. But then again, Facebook has to go and ruin it because I know a guy that's in a band, and he was telling me the same thing. He goes, Facebook, anytime your band has any kind of success, Facebook wants to get involved. They want a piece of.
Yeah, if they can't make money off of you, you don't get played on Facebook.
Or you say they'll start.
Yeah, I've watched it. Yeah. You know, I've every now and then I'll go in there and I'll choose to run a promotion on one of our ads.
Yeah, I've been.
You know, Facebook will send me like a little thing like, "Hey, here's a free $30 ad credit."
Whoa.
So I'll do that, and then I'll notice after that ad quits, the next week my post might get to see 10 followers. I'm like,
yeah, that's what I heard.
I see what you're doing here. You're not slick.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. See, you learn about new little things like that. Yeah, that's what somebody was telling me. Well, again,
now me and my drummer's goal is just to break all the social media.
Wow. Yeah, well, again, Joey, thanks for taking time to do this. I just want to say before we go, let's keep in touch. And anytime you have anything to promote or you want to do this again, feel free. Because I like to, once I've interviewed people, keep in touch and say, hey, anytime.
Absolutely, man. Like I said, I really appreciate you having us on, and you'll be probably the first person that I contact anytime we have something new.
Okay, yeah, please do. And just.